Please be seated. Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. Oh, it's everyone's favorite miracle. I mean, seriously, you want this friend, don't you? Like, if you ever come up with this miracle, would you let me know? Because you're about to become my favorite. I don't have favorite parishioners, but I could. I'm just saying, I could be bought. Okay, so Caroline was asking me, she's like, so on the back sheet of your page, of your bulletin today is a drawing page or whatever for the first miracle or whatever. And she's like, do we have to guess what it is? And I was like, if you listen, you'll find out. I'm going to cover it. We'll talk about it. But let's talk about it. Because I actually find this story, one, very amusing, and two, very, very pertinent for our time and place in society. So, one, you all know that I love Mary. She's like one of my favorite feminists of all time. But also, being a mom, I've totally had this conversation. Totally. And every mom, every parent in the room has had this conversation. And you know you have. Your kid doesn't want to do something. And you're like, are you going to do something? No, I'm not going to do that. Just do it. Right? You will, yeah. We've all had this conversation. And is it comforting to know that even our Savior's mother had to have this conversation with him? I feel comforted by that. Because you know what? Being a Christian is hard. So in the moments when you're reminded that Jesus was like fully human, because I feel like we understand the Jesus being fully divine thing, but sometimes we just gloss over Jesus being fully human. So I am comforted sometimes in the moments when I'm like, oh yeah, Jesus fully human too. So that's kind of comforting. So the story goes something like this. One, let's talk about the cultural aspects of this. And we even know this in our time, that a marriage, of a wedding feast is a big deal, right? You put a lot of effort into this. There's a lot of judgment that comes along with it. We like to pretend that there isn't, but there is. There's so much judgment that comes with it. But at this time, it's very, very important. So it's this is a hospitality culture, and so making sure that you are a good host, that you provide for your guests is very, very important. And so I cannot highlight how big a deal it is that they've run out of wine. That's a really, really big deal. That's going to bring so much shame and embarrassment on this family. And Mary gets that. Mary gets that. So it's not, we all love a good open bar at a wedding. I'm not here to deny that at all. But I do want us to go a little bit deeper, that what Mary is realizing here and what she's trying to do is to save this family from so much shame and embarrassment. And she knows that Jesus can do something about it. And also, Mary has known since before she had Jesus who and what Jesus is. Now, we kind of talked it last week. There is some theological debate about what Jesus knew and when he knew it, but we don't have that with Mary. Mary has always known. Do you think, okay, we're all parents. Like, we all get this a little bit, right? We've all worked with kids before. You ever get frustrated with them? Like, you pour so much into these tiny humans. And you're like, when are they going to grow up? Let me remind you, bro is about 30, okay? Mary is known since before she got pregnant. Do you think at some point she's just like, bro, it's time? That's how she is at this wedding, right? And he's like, I don't want to. It's not my problem. You ever said, it's not my problem? In our society, we're really good at being like, well, I know that there's racism and homophobia and misogyny and stuff, but that's not really my problem. Poverty is not my problem. And Jesus is like, I don't want to, so it's not my problem. And Mary's like, it is your problem. It is your problem. And it's less about Jesus thinking it isn't his problem. And to be honest, it's usually less about us thinking it's not our problem, more about us not wanting to be uncomfortable. It's us not wanting to have difficult conversations. It's us not wanting to be judged. It's us not wanting to mess up. It's really more of a fear thing. Because we all know we're all human. It's all of our problem, right? When our brothers and sisters are suffering, that's our problem. Because we are one. In God's divinity, we are one. What is your problem is my problem. What is my problem? Frankly, it's your problem. And you're like, yeah, we know. We know. So it's not that Jesus doesn't believe that. He's like, what is that to me? He's blowing it off because he just doesn't want to enter into something that he might be afraid of. Ministry is scary. What God calls you and I to do is overwhelming and terrifying. There's no way to get around that. It just is. What you and I are called to do in this world is terrifying. Right now, does it seem really, really terrifying? Does it ever seem super, super hard to do and proclaim the God that we follow? It seems uncomfortable. And frankly, it seems scary sometimes. And I get that. And you want to know what? Jesus gets that, because for Jesus it was scary too. And so sometimes we want to avoid it. Now the powerful thing is that in community, and Jesus has this too, it's his mom, we have those people who push us a little bit and say, hey, I get that it's scary. I get that you don't want to. And it's overwhelming and it's difficult, but we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And does she shame him? No. Does she make a huge big to-do about it? No. She does what most good leaders do. And she's like, she does her own internal eye roll. And she's like, okay. So then she just goes to sermons. She's like, just do what he tells you to do. Because she knows Jesus. Just like you and I know each other, and we know the Christian faith. We know that when push comes to shove, we're going to hopefully do the right thing, right? Knock on all the wood. Because, y'all, we got some real things that we're going to have to be doing here. The world is coming, and the Christians have always had to do things that have really, really pushed us and that we've been afraid to do. The arc of justice is always moving forward. But, it's hard. And sometimes we do it really, really slowly. And sometimes we fall back a little bit. But the arc of justice and love is always towards justice and love. Always, throughout history. In the Christian faith, when we are doing what we are called to do, we are always moving towards justice and love. Always. Like I said, do we do it perfectly? Absolutely not. Do we mess it up? Absolutely. Do we kind of sneak back sometimes? Yup. But then we inch a little bit forward. And it's because we do it together. Even Jesus struggles to do this on his own. It is in community. It is having people who love you and care enough about you to hold you accountable. Not to enable you, not to baby you and say, oh, I know it. Don't you worry, you can do it next time. Mary ain't doing that. She's like, no, we start now. You start now. And he does. And he launches what we are now a part of. But it's with hesitancy, it's with fear, it's with worry that he does this. That's important for you and I to hear. Because I'll be honest, and I can only speak for myself. I know we're all in different places, but I have a lot of fear and worry right now. I do. I work day in and day out in places where people say and do awful things to each other, and they say it's okay. And I feel like I've lived my entire life trying to move forward, right? And you feel a little bit like, ugh. And sometimes you want to quit. Sometimes you're tired and you're sick of it and it's overwhelming and you just don't feel like doing it anymore. Sometimes we're Jesus at the wedding and we're like, can I just enjoy my drink? Please, for 5 minutes. I didn't come here to do any miracles. This ain't my wedding. I just came because I heard there was an open bar, okay? But the scotch is always terrible at an open bar, so I don't even know why I go. I'm like, I just want to do my thing. And yet, the reason we live in community is because we cannot live like that. We cannot live in a world where we say, it's not my problem. We cannot live in a world where we say, I just want to relax and enjoy this. I don't want to worry about that. I don't want to think about that. That's not my problem. That's not what being a Christian is. Frankly, that's not what being a human is. If we are humaning correctly, we are humaning together. We are not humaning by ourselves in our cold little corner, being comfortable doing whatever we want, blind to what's going on around us. Because here's the thing, when other humans are suffering, you and I are suffering. And God calls us to do something about it. And I get that sometimes that's hard. I get that most of the time that's hard. And I get that it is exhausting and you want to quit sometimes. But the reason we do this together is because when you get exhausted, I'll support you. When I get exhausted, you support me. And we hold each other together. And sometimes when we're like, I just want to quit. I don't even feel like doing this anymore. We call each other to accountability and you say, we're not quitting. Take a breather, that's fine. But then we go and say, just do it. And I get that that's a hard message. But I hope that there's some comfort in the fact that we are one more in a long line of generations of people who have done this. We didn't have to invent this. We didn't have to create it. We come from a God who understands what this is like. A God who loves us so much that God comes as Christ into our world. A God who understands it so much that God, as Christ, didn't always want to do it. That's comforting. And that's frankly why we ain't going it alone.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons.
I know.
Can't wait to meet you.
Grace is my new favorite assistant. She doesn't like coffee. I don't like competition.